The number one thing we're talking about is how advisors in a very noisy world can create influence, right? And I don't know if you guys realize this. I recently looked up these stats um, of the advisors on LinkedIn. So let me start somewhere else. Of the people on LinkedIn, active people on LinkedIn, which means they logged in once in every 30 days, 2 to 3% share content, right? Yeah. Now, the advisor world is very, very different to that, right? Of the active advisors on LinkedIn, again, logged in every 30 days, almost 25% share content, right? And we love that. Now we all know that there's, the industry makes that easy for them. Um, it does a little bit of diluting of content on LinkedIn. There are plenty of services out there that provide content at a minimal expense that advisors can just push out. It's canned content, it's generic content. What the advisors that are here joining us today, and what the four of us here to talk about is how do we cut through that noise, right? When everybody's writing blogs, I shouldn't say everybody, but when a large portion of advisors are writing blogs, a large portion of advisors sharing content on LinkedIn and other social platforms, um, and sending email marketing, what are the important aspects for advisors to be doing today to cut through that noise that has become the digital marketing content engine? So, no better people than my friend Abby Sheridan with Greenrose Public Relations. Abby, thank you for joining me today, albeit just a couple minutes late. Thank you for joining me today. I love some of the work that you're doing with Peter, but PR is a very important part of building that credibility and building trust. I'm going to shut up for a second, Abby. I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, so thank you, Charlie, for having me. And like you mentioned, I do PR and communications for financial advisors. Pete Kroll is one of my clients, actually one of my first ever clients since I started 4.5 years ago. And yeah, we do everything for our clients, from writing press releases to connecting them with reporters and positioning them as thought leaders in the industry and in top tier media. So super excited to be here.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Abby. And my good friend Matt Halloran, thanks for being here, Matt. I appreciate it entirely. So, many of you know Matt as co-founder of Proudmouth. Proudmouth is a podcasting team of experts that help advisors get their voice out through podcasting. Matt, a little bit more on that.
Yeah, so we've done 10,000 episodes and over 150,000 social media posts with no
Wow.
compliance issues. So this is what we do every day, all day. We do full audio and full video. But our big thing is just giving financial services professionals the confidence to go ahead and hit record. It's really, really important. Kitces came out with a report, I think it was last year or the year before, that said only 12% of advisors are podcasting. Now, I'm sure that number has gone up some, but still, this is blue ocean, everybody. You still have so much opportunity to start creating content. The best time to have started a podcast would have been during COVID, but the second best time is today, right? That's what we want to do. We want to get you guys started. And so I think we're going to talk about that. And here's the other super cool thing. And this is why, I love Abby and everything that she does is your content strategy really needs to be working with your PR strategy and that exposure strategy. And when they work together, man, it's freaking jazz music. So.
Yeah, I love that. Very cool. We'll hear more about podcasting and the importance of that and building an influence strategy. Peter, you kind of get to be our poster child today. I love that, man. So it's nice to bring proof to the webinar as well. You don't just get to hear from the people who own these businesses and help advisors build influence every day. But Peter, you're working directly with Abby on a PR strategy.
Yep.
Why don't we talk a little bit about what that's meant for you, what that's meant for the influence, and how that puts you in touch with and builds credibility with your audience.
Well, I'll start out by saying that my degree is in communication. It's not in business or finance or anything like that. So, I've been doing communications since, the early 90s when I got my degree. So I've always recognized the importance of communicating, the importance of marketing, but especially the role of PR, because PR creates for you the opportunity to be a thought leader. And it has opened so many doors for us over the last, several years. Abby and I have been, I was one of her first clients with Greenrose, but we've been working together, I think about 7 years now, because we were working with Trust Company of America, which was my previous custodian. And so, again, the opportunities that I would have, I like to say we punch well above our weight when it comes to media. And a lot of that is because of her work.
Wonderful. So, you guys, the things that we really want to talk about today is cohesion as well, right? So, building a cohesive brand, and how we bring that to the market. Quick introduction for myself. We put this out there, and I think most people know who I am. But Charlie Van Derven, I'm the founder of Social Advisors, and what we do is we bring all these things together. Matt with podcasting and content, Abby with PR, and we work with advisors like Peter to put together automated marketing and content strategies. And then the one thing that I think we do really well is actually promote events like this one. You guys wouldn't know it by me having some difficulty as we entered the room, but we promote a lot of events for advisors so that as we're creating influence and creating networks that we're speaking to, we can find out very easily and very quickly who's resonating, who we're influencing, basically, who's resonating with that, with that messaging. So, let's start off with, thank you all for the introductions. I'm a little bit frazzled because I'm jumping into this thing a little bit late and looking for the questions that I had lined out and everything like that. So, thank you for your patience there. Matt, let's start off with a little bit about who's an ideal advisor for a podcast, as you're talking to advisors and understanding who's got the opportunity to build influence. Is that everybody? Are you guys looking for a specific advisor that you work with?
Yeah. So, well, when we first started, if you could fog a mirror, we'd let you start podcasting, because, we were just trying to start a business, Kirk and I. But now, because there are a lot of shows out there, we're starting to be a little bit more picky. So I don't want another podcast that's just going to talk about a Roth strategy or why it's important to have a 401k. It really is a show, and we lean into that hard. And in fact, the best training I ever went through as a podcaster was actually PR training. Teaches you how to stay on point, teaches you how to talk in smaller sound bites. And in fact, I've tracked this for years. 3 minutes is about the ideal length for you to answer any question. And if you can stay within that, you can keep people's attention. But you have to have a niche. So I'm going to start at the basics, right? If you say, well, I work with anybody over the age of 55 who has $250,000 in investable assets, here's the deal. You're competing with Ken Fisher, and you're never going to outspend Ken Fisher. Sorry, you're just not. And the more niche-y or niche-y you get, the better you're going to be. Because again, we have, as business owners, we have to figure out where we're going to spend our money. Right. And if you're going to try to go over nurse anesthetists who live in Texas, Charlie, your job is easy, dude. Abby's job's way easier because now she knows exactly who she needs to go after. And the objections that I hear often is, well, then I'm excluding people, and that's the point, right? Your marketing shouldn't be for everybody. Your marketing should be for your ideal target market. So please remember that it's a show. Number two, walk before you run. And I can't stress this enough. On your influence journey, if you go out guns a-blazing and trying to do an episode every week, you're going to fail. We actually ask our clients to start with one per month just so they can exercise this muscle. Many of you are really, really good at teaching people stuff. This is a different medium, and you really have to be prepared for it.
Yeah. I love that.
I can really follow on to what Matt's talking about with having a very defined niche. So we're a sustainable investment firm, and we've been doing it. Next month will be our 21st year. So we've been in long before the BlackRocks and everybody else jumped on the bandwagon. And I couldn't agree more that the more narrow you create your niche, the bigger your opportunities open up, because you're not competing with every person who's a generalist anymore. And so, you're spot on with that, Matt.
Yeah. Abby, as we get narrow on niches, because I think it's a very important conversation, right? And we very much try to do the exact same thing, is understand. The better you understand your audience, the more you can recognize your value or their pain that we can solve. When we look at PR, I mean, how narrow do we get, right? I mean, are we looking for big headlines and in big publications because that brings credibility? or are we trying to speak very specifically to a small audience?
Yeah, so it all depends on, what the goals are. I think it's always the goal is always to, have a big headline, but that's not realistic. And so really starting on the smaller scale with a lot of our advisors, we start focusing on where do they want to be. And of course, everybody is Wall Street Journal above the fold, right? But
Of
that
course,
doesn't that
of
doesn't happen
course.
from day one. It builds over time. And so just being a little bit more open-minded to, okay, maybe I'll start with the smaller publications, or maybe I'll start with the advisor trade publications. Even if I don't necessarily want to be talking to other advisors, it helps build that credibility. And then media begets media. And over time, maybe that is the Wall Street Journal feature.
Well, yeah, I mean, as to your point, as that builds over time, right? And that's what we're speaking to with influence. Yeah, I think one of the most important things advisors can do along those lines, right, is if you understand that niche, when we say influence, everybody thinks viral, right? Everybody thinks these large audiences. I don't know. You can be a micro influencer to 10 people, or well, 10 is probably small, but 100 people or 1,000 people, right? So I agree with what all three of you say, right? As we narrow down that niche, I don't need to be speaking to this person that doesn't necessarily fit. I only want to be speaking to, to an audience that fits that mold, right? So let's jump a little bit more into the tools that build authority and help to create connection. Abby, talk to me a little bit of how you help advisors, maybe Peter specifically, telling their story. And here's the caveat I got to throw in there: in a compliant world.
Yeah, so love compliance. We actually work with some really great compliance team. Pete and his team, they have a really great compliance team. I think for us, it's really important to understand how the compliance team works. I think a good workaround is usually scheduling interviews with reporters, because sometimes written commentary can get stuck. Pete was really great and easy to work with from the beginning because he wasn't afraid to go out there and say things that were maybe a little bit risque and things that most people were not talking about, like shitting on BlackRock. Can I curse? Shitting on BlackRock. And he was comfortable with that. Most advisors are not going to be comfortable with that. So we really try to lean into, where is your comfort level? Because you should only be, you don't have to be anybody else. And then compliance is helpful because they'll usually give us a list of terms or words that we have to stay away from.
Yeah.
And then we do a really good job of staying in touch with the compliance team and saying, okay, this article has published. And then we say, okay, now what do we do with it?
Yeah.
And so that goes through the whole back end on the compliance side. But I like compliance. They keep us safe. And I feel very protected when working with them.
I actually think it makes our jobs a little bit easier.
Yeah, I agree.
Right. When we talk to anybody outside the industry, compliance is always the barrier to entry for people working in the industry, which I like, right? Because it helps protect us a little bit. But working with compliance actually makes the job a bit easier because it does give us that framework and parameters on what we can and cannot say, can and do.
Yeah.
Abby, I want to talk a little bit about paid media versus earned media, and the impact that both have on growing a brand like Peter's brand.
Yeah.
And Peter, we're going to let you chime in on this one too. But Abby, why don't you just kind of explain the difference and what that might look like in a strategy?
Yeah, so we primarily do earned media. So that is, we're connecting you with journalists and you're being quoted in articles. The only fee that is paid is to us for our time, but we're not paying for advertisements or things like that. And the work that we do really, to your point, brings the credibility. Because it's, CNBC is quoting you in an article, that is instant credibility.
Yeah.
Some of the paid stuff can also bring value, but we try to the best of our ability to just focus on the earned. But a lot of our clients really do like to do speaking at conferences or sponsorship, and then obviously that's the paid element that comes into play.
Yeah. Peter, any examples there that you want to share, like where maybe we got some earned media that you saw a huge impact and lift on your brand and influence as a result?
I've got a great example. So I do like to do a lot of writing. So, I've been a contributor to Forbes. I'm not anymore, but I've been also a contributor to Kiplinger. And so I'll regularly write articles about sustainable investing, the difference between ESG and sustainable investing, and a lot of things, questions that people are normally asking. And I'm also quoted, regularly in Barron's and Bloomberg. And I finally made the Wall Street Journal, right, Abby?
Yeah.
And not long ago. Gosh, I want to say maybe 2.5 years ago, I got an email just out of the blue from an editor at McGraw-Hill saying, "Hey, we love your writing. Have you ever thought about writing a book?" And so went through a process, changed publishers, but through all that, because of my exposure, I have a book deal. I have a book coming out in October called The Sustainable Investor. And so, I mean, that's about as perfect of an example as you can give right there.
Yeah, that's perfect. So, Peter, how much of that, Abby talked about, earned media maybe
Mhm.
on a smaller scale that gets picked up, and we kind of joked about it, Abby, but everybody wants to be in the Wall Street Journal.
Right.
How realistic is that really? Like if we
Mm.
can get a local interview in someone's backyard, um, how do advisors take a smaller interview and parlay that into something larger with greater credibility?
So I have a really good example. I have a client who was quoted in an article about, this was a couple years ago, about money moves to make during COVID. And it was a US News and Report article. And as a result of them being quoted in that article, an Investopedia reporter reached out and
All
said,
right.
"Hey, I want to speak to you about this topic." So then that article published. And then New York Times reporter reached out and said, "Hey, I want to speak to you about this topic." So it really is, well, first of all, you do have to have something interesting to say. It makes my job a lot harder if, you're just saying what everybody else is saying.
Yeah.
So you really have to, it is a true partnership. So you have to bring the interesting comments, I bring the reporters, and together it's magical. But yeah, it does happen. It's a snowball effect, and it does take time. But I also like to say, let's pretend nobody ever saw that US News article, right? Like, what do we do with it now? We're promoting it on our social media, on our website, sending it to clients, prospects, all the things, so that you're getting the most legs possible out of it.
Yeah.
You
Very,
know, and I-
very.
and and to follow up on that, I think you also have to be available. So I'm sitting at home one night, I get a text from Abby saying, "Hey, would you like to be quoted in the New York Times?" I'm like, "Well, no, I'm not sure. I'm eating dinner." No, I immediately jumped on it, and to compound that, the idea that we should say something that really means something to us, and so. The question, the article was about ExxonMobil being supportive of zero emission goals. And so my quote was, unlike their big oil competitors that have begun taking action on climate change, Woods, who's the CEO, and ExxonMobil have continued to live in a fairy tale world of inaction while California burns and Texas freezes. And it's things like that, I think, that are going to put you out there. They're going to really make a distinction between somebody who says, well, we do financial planning and we'll help you with your retirement and your kids' education and your charitable goals, versus, hey, we're really
We're
an
a
activist in
fiduciary.
this and we want to make a difference.
What was that, Abby?
And we're a fiduciary, right? What
Yeah.
everybody
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're a fiduciary.
And we're a fiduciary. Very good. Very cool. Matt, let's pivot to podcast in a little bit.
Well,
So
I can't let go what they just said a whole bunch of stuff that
yeah, all
I
right,
need
all
to
right,
I need
man.
to
All right,
amplify, right?
all right. Yeah, go for it.
Slow your roll, brother. Hold
All
on,
right,
dude,
dude.
man.
All right.
All right. So number one, Abby just said something that I wish that was like megaphoned everywhere, which is it's a momentum game,
Mhm.
It is.
right? And so it's the same thing with any content marketing strategy, really any marketing strategy. Marketing does not directly equal sales. PR does not equal sales.
Right.
Podcasting doesn't equal sales. It is a process, and you have to plug into the process and be patient. And if you are patient, magical things happen, right? I'm going to personalize this very quickly. I said because it's the idea of saying something that is going to get attention. Because remember, it's all clickbait. We're pleasing the algorithm here, everybody. We need more eyeballs, more clicks, more responses, more comments. And so if you're just saying something like I'm a fiduciary, that nobody cares. But if you say what I ended up saying on a stage, which was FINRA needs to pull their head out of their ass to let advisors use social media. This was a long time ago. I got a book deal because Investment News quoted me. Wiley reached out to me. It's very similar to Peter's story there, but it was because I said something that people knew was going to get clicks and going to get ad space, right? And I'm not trying to distill all of that, because that world is that's what you're competing with. Now, podcasting is no different. You have to have great podcast titles that get people's attention, make them want to listen. You have to have SEO infused keyword descriptions of your show so that when people are searching, you're the answer, right? And that's how you need to create content. But the most important thing, and Peter, that New York Times quote is a perfect example of, listen, it's a show. Okay.
Yeah.
The world is a stage, and you better be ready to perform, brothers and sisters, because the world has changed. You can't just sit behind something and be all super, I don't want to participate. Well, if you don't want to participate, you're not going to grow. You have to participate. And Abby said this too. You have to lean into your you-ness, right? We call it being your own loud. You have to lean into that. When you lean into that, your influence acceleration goes much, much, much faster, because people do business with you. They don't care if you're a fiduciary. They don't care that you have the greatest products and services. They don't care that you eked out another 2% in the S&P over, BlackRock. We'll all slam BlackRock today. But what they want is they want you. They love Peter. They love Peter. Now, Peter's got some great stuff, don't get me wrong, but the connection needs to start there, and we need to be okay with that.
It's the Simon Sinek start with why.
Yeah.
And if anybody who doesn't know that, they don't care about how you do it. They don't care about what you do. They care about why you do it. So if anybody who hasn't read that book before, make sure you pick that up, because it really is sort of the genesis for any true marketing campaign that is going to draw the kind of clients that you want to you.
So I want to take that and just ask all of the advisors that are on this one simple question. Are you tired of being the best kept secret in your area? Most of you are. You're really frustrated. Yeah. You're not getting quoted in local magazines or trades or anything specifically that will get you any sort of notoriety. Your social media isn't getting any traction because you don't know how to use it, because you're not using Social Advisors with Charlie, right? You're not creating sensational material that's going to go ahead and get clicks. You have to have a plan, and you have to have patience. And more importantly, you have to be wildly consistent. And Peter said something too that I'm so happy that you guys said this, both of you, is you have to be willing to show up, right? So when it's a PR thing and the Wall Street Journal calls, you drop your fork, you answer the damn phone. But when you're going to do a show, you have to show up. And I know, Peter, you went through this. You knew your talking points, man. You knew that here are my core messages, because Abby's made sure you know those. It's the same thing when you're creating long form content. You need to be repetitive. You need to be driving your message home. And most importantly, you need to be entertaining.
Okay, so let me jump in here. The two of you, like, this conversation started from both Peter, you, and Matt, was something very controversial, right? I mean, Peter, your commentary, Matt, your commentary on FINRA. And maybe this is a question for Abby, how important is that? I mean, certainly we don't want to all look the exact same as the industry and the regulators want us to, because it makes it easy on them, right? And compliance attorneys want us to, because it's easy on them. How important is that controversial statement to pick up that attention?
I mean, it definitely helps. It does. But like you said, not everybody is going to be that controversial. And I don't want you to be, if that's not who you are. We'll lean into, whoever you are. But reporters are talking to a lot of sources for every single story. They don't have a lot of space. Editors are making cuts. They have certain word count that the article has to fit in. So inevitably, at least one or two sources is going to get cut from an article. So if you're saying what everybody else is saying, you're not going to make the cut.
Right.
So how do we take somebody who came up in a very kind of, a very amalgamized environment, and everybody wants to, they don't want to be doing anything too different because that's the way it's trained. How do we make that transition? How do we change mindset from the average advisor on Main Street to somebody who's got the right voice to get that attention?
I think it really depends on where you're working. If you're working in an RIA that has got some flexibility with what you're able to say, you're always going to be able to really let your personality show through. But if you're working in one of the the big box firms, they're going to really clamp down on what you can and cannot say. And so I think the first part of that is, where are you working first and foremost? And if you want to have your personality show through, you may need to transition over to the RIA side.
And then you have to call us.
Yeah.
Interesting. So how do we tie these two worlds together?
Well, I want to add something there, Charlie. Very
get in
quickly.
there, Matt. You got it.
And because first off, understanding your own regulatory environment is important. And one of the greatest things that I found, and because we have very similar things like Abby, we've got like the no-no words. So we scrub all of our content for those no-no words. And we've gotten them from pretty much everybody. So we're hyper sensitive on that. But here's the best thing. Let's say you do want to do something, or you were, you're preparing for an interview. You say, and they say, well, you can't do that. Your response to the compliance people should be, what can I do to make this compliant?
Yeah.
Man, I wish somebody would have told every advisor I've worked with over the last, 15 years to just say that one thing, because that changes the relationship and the dialogue with compliance specifically. So there's number one. And number two is get permission. So some of us gave ourselves permission to be as crazy as we are, right? But other people don't have that level of self-empowerment. So find somebody who you trust who can say, okay, Peter, you're good to go. Like, I believe in you. I want you to lean into the Peterness. And when you look at Abby's services and PR services in general, that's one of the things that I loved when I worked with our PR agencies, was they just gave me permission and the confidence to feel like it was okay for me to say the things that I wanted to say, because here's the best part, we practiced it. Right. And so I'm not going into, when I remember when I met with, her name was Daisy Maxey at the Wall Street Journal. When I was in the Wall Street Journal, I was terrified, but I had my friend and Matt Ackerman and Jason Lehida, I'll just say who it was, told me what to say. And so I was okay, bam. She asked me a question, bam, bam, bam. And she's like, that was much faster than I'd expected. And I was like, well, I was prepared, which of course you do good with some reporters, they're going to want you back. And it's the same thing with content creation when it comes to podcasting. When you have great guests on your show, they're probably going to want you on their show, right? You do really good as a host. This actually just happened to me yesterday. I just got introduced to two people who have over 5 million followers on Instagram because I did a good job of interviewing an influencer, right? And swing for the fences too. And that I'll shut up with that is, look, ask, this is one of the cool things about PR. They're fearless, man. They're calling, the Today Show Pitch and Pete, right? And I love that stuff. You need to do the same thing with your content creation, video or audio. Swing for the fences. Start asking people to be on your show, because that's where you're really going to grow.
So I've got an interesting story related to my first episode. So about 10, 12 years ago, I don't even remember when it was, I was at a Green Expo in Wilmington, Delaware, of all places, and I was scheduled to speak, talk about sustainable investing, but they also scheduled Ed Begley Jr. at the exact same time as me. So he got 200 people, I got to meet him, nice guy, etc. Fast forward to, a decade or so, and I'm going to be in California for the Future Proof Conference, which if anybody has or hasn't heard of it, you need to check it out. It's the most awesome conferences ever. And so somehow or another, I'm connected to his wife, Rochelle Carson, through Facebook. So I send them a message and say, hey, I'm going to be in California. Can we get together? And she replies back and she's like, no, I'm going to be in New York, but here's Ed's phone number. Give him a call. I mean, just out of the blue.
Hilarious.
So I give Ed a call, leave a message. A week and a half goes by, my phone rings, it's Ed calling me back. Yeah, I remember meeting you in Delaware, whatever, blah, blah, blah. He's like, when are you going to be in town? So I go out to Future Proof, drive over to Studio City, And I go in and I'm like, just pure honesty. I'm like, Ed, I didn't really have an agenda for a meeting, but my marketing people want me to start a podcast. Would you be my first guest?
Wow.
He puts his hand on my shoulder and he's like, Pete, I would love to do that for you. He's like, when do you want to do it? And of course, I'm prepared. I says, how about now?
Yeah,
All
Pete.
right, let's do it. He's like, he's got like just a t-shirt on. He's like, let me go change my shirt. Runs upstairs. I set up the whole setup there, and we record my first episode with Ed Begley Jr. in his kitchen. And it's one of the it's exactly what you're saying, Matt. Don't be afraid to ask. I did a bunch of training, over a decade ago with a guy named Jack Canfield. He's the guy who wrote the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. Nice guy. He would host these week-long seminar kind of things. And he always would say, what's the worst case scenario when you ask? They say no, so you're not any worse off.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that's how I try to play as much as I can is, I'm not any worse off if they say no. So here we are, we're about to launch episode 23 in the last, Abby, year and a quarter, give or take. So
Awesome. Yeah, very cool. Two things I want to comment on from this conversation. Number one, mindset is maybe the most important thing that somebody has when it comes to this, right? So we talk about the fear, right? A lot of people have that fear or fear of not being worthy of having these types of, whether it's large publications or famous people or whatever it is, right? So that's a hurdle that I find a lot of advisors have to get over, is that fear of the actual outreach. I could say it, I kind of minimize it when I say it's that sales call reluctance, but certainly that is a very, very real thing. The other thing that you're all commenting on, we use this acronym all the time. It's old Tom Poland, who's a marketer that I follow, OPN, right? Other people's networks. In this world that we live in of influence, there's not a single audience out there that doesn't have a series of influencers already impacting them. Right. So OPN, other people's networks, you do not have to kick down doors. You do not have to run through walls to get into a certain niche. You just have to know who's already done that. Right. So there's a little bit of coattail riding that goes on there. And so that's something that we preach to our clients. And, whether that's a joint webinar like this, right, we all bring some influence to the conversation. Whether they're doing a joint webinar to, I had a conversation with a gentleman this morning. He prospects JetBlue pilots, right? Because they've got some certain retirement things that makes it favorable for him. Well, there's plenty of other people talking to JetBlue pilots. How do we create that influence more quickly? So yeah, OPN, mark that acronym down. Other people's networks.
And we call it OPP, other people's podcasts,
Okay,
right?
yeah.
And so it's the same thing. In fact, I'm going to give everybody it's not free, but it's an unbelievable resource. And Peter, I don't know if you've done this already, or Abby, I don't know if this is in your tool belt, but it's called podcastguests.com. And what this is cool. You get a week. And by the way, I need to own stock in this company because I refer to this all the time, but it's unbelievable, right? So it's like $50 a month or something like that is the fee. And every week you get 10 people who are looking to be a guest, and then 10 shows that are looking for guests. But the best part, so that's nice. It's a nice email. And sometimes you get early pitch opportunities. But what's really cool is you go on the thing and you can index and look exactly for JetBlue. Like, I want to talk to people of a pilot podcast. You type in pilot podcast, bam, there's the list. And then you can directly communicate with them and say, hey, I'm a financial advisor that, specializes in working with pilots. Hey, here are the 5 things that I see are the biggest issues. I'd love to talk about them on your show. Listen, they're looking for guests, guys. They're looking for guests because so much easier to host a show when you're not having to come up with 30 minutes of content or an hour's worth of content. So podcastguest.com. In fact, that's part of our 9 podcast growth strategies, is really setting yourself up to be on other people's shows, because it's borrowed credibility. If Peter's on my show, right, and I'm Peter's ideal client, then everybody's going to think that I already think Peter's a great, investor and financial guy. Or why would I have had him on my show?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I felt that way when I was on the Michael Kitces podcast. I mean, I felt like I had sort of reached that pinnacle because, in the RIA world, Michael is sort of, he's sort of a god when it comes to these kinds of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one podcast, not the one, but the podcast that every client that I'm on, they get inundated with requests, inbounds, and you actually see the tangible results from
Yeah.
that.
I love that. Let's, I want to, not that we had discussed it in preparation or anything, but I want to talk a little bit about books. Peter, you've got a book coming out. Matt, you've written a book. Abby, I don't know if you have or not. I haven't. So,
I have not. I
All
don't have the
right. So,
time right now.
yeah, I'm in good
You
company
keep me
then.
busy.
Yeah, like I do, Abby. Okay.
Matt, let's talk about your book, man. Well, we're all cursing on here, so
Yeah.
shut the F up and listen, right?
Well, so let's talk about why more than anything, because I think you need to have a very, very strong why to write a book. And I've been studying communications, much like my undergrad, minors in communications. Peter's major was in communications. But the simple fact that I've interviewed about 3,000 people, not just here at Proudmouth, when I was a therapist, and I found that people just really needed to learn how to listen. But the book itself is cool, and yeah, I'd love for everybody to buy it. That would be great. But let's talk about what the book has done, right? So if you ever think you're going to make money, now Peter might be in a different situation. This is my third book, by the way. The first one was published by Bloomberg Finance, The Social Media Handbook for Financial Advisors. Worst title ever. Didn't come up with it. Didn't have a choice. My second book was a total flop because the publishing company just screwed up the book and it was too late. We got 10,000 copies and they were all terrible. So I really brought in a good team. But what the book has done is influence is a sequential momentum game. And when if you're starting here, right? So I'm going to go back to Practice Makeover, which by the way was financial planning's reality television show that Matt Ackerman did, right? I'm sorry, it was Investment News. And that got me a little bit of moment. And then all of a sudden, then I started getting, then Wall Street Journal was kind of the apex of that phase. First book, second book, third book. And because of all of this, I'm on stages now talking to my ideal target market, which are financial advisors, right? I mean, this is why we've, Charlie, you and Abby, and we've hyper focused on working with, and we specifically work with RIAs, right? That's who we want to work with. But it's all about the influence game. And when you actually have a roadmap on what are the steps, what are the boxes you need to tick to continue to accelerate your influence, really cool stuff happens. Now, this is not meant to sound arrogant because I just want to be clear with everybody. I worked really, really, really hard for this, and I have for the last 8 years, but Indigo Marketing just named me the 10th most influential person in financial services. I've never been an advisor. I'm not an advisor, right? But how cool is that? And here's the thing. It's because it was a plan, right? This wasn't luck. It was because we had a plan. Kirk and I had a plan. We executed the plan. I was the face of the plan. And Bob's your uncle. It's really cool. All of you who are listening who have a niche can gain that level of notoriety. A book's just one step in the puzzle.
Yeah.
Step in the puzzle. You know what I meant.
Yeah,
a
piece in the puzzle.
Sorry about that.
Step in the path, whatever. I get it.
We know what you're talking about.
Thanks, man. Thanks.
So we're kind of, we're talking about one thing, but we're really focused on PR and podcasting and a book, which kind of fits in there. How do we tie this together, right? I mean, does podcasting fit in PR? Maybe you guys tell me it doesn't. Does PR fit into podcasting? How does all that work together?
Yeah, I mean, I think PR supercharges any of your other marketing efforts.
Yeah.
And we can take content from your podcast, right? Like, I think there should be themes. So if for one episode, if you're talking about socially responsible investing, like let's focus on that as a theme for the month or the quarter. We can use some of your insights from the podcast episode and pitch that out to journalists. So really, we try to repurpose any content that you guys that is existing, and then as we're pushing you out there, you may be quoted as the host of the Dollars and Change podcast, right? And then that brings it back to the podcast, and it's just like a circular kind of thing.
I like it.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at my LinkedIn description, it's author of The Sustainable Investor, host of Dollars and Change podcast, future-proof speaker. I spoke at Future-Proof in Miami.
Awesome.
Things like that people are going to recognize. It all comes together. But Abby's right. I think PR in many ways is sort of the supporting part of it. It's the underlying part that defines you as a thought leader.
And I love it when our clients have gone through PR training. I mean, it's like the greatest. Honestly, that is if you're going to give yourself a gift in 2025, PR training's it. I mean, not podcasting. I mean, yeah, I'd love for you to be a client, but spend money on PR training. It's going to change how you do so much. And I absolutely love that. We love it when our clients have PR. We know that a lot of what we're going to be creating is going to be amplified and supported through other outlets. And it also really works well. So what Abby was just talking about there, one of the systems that we have is we have them do mini series. So, let's say there's going to be a 3-part mini series on the top 5 retirement mistakes JetBlue pilots make.
Yeah.
Episode 1's going to be this. Episode 2, we're going to bring on 2 pilots, and then episode 3, we're going to bring on, an HR director at JetBlue or something like that, right?
Cool.
Then not only is that really, really great for airline magazine or wherever the hell you're going to try to get PR from, right? But it's also really good from a prospecting perspective. Abby said this earlier. She sends the articles, Wall Street Journal. Hey, Pete was focused here, right? That's great. You can do the same thing with your content strategy too. But PR is, I think it's the supercharger, and it also can help you stay focused. That's why we work very, very well with PR companies, because we know that Peters of the world are going to stay hyper-focused on their core message, on their core audience, because that's what PR training really helps you with. And so it's one hand shaking the other, and I think it just supercharges any content marketing. Because when you're creating your own content, and all of a sudden, bam, you drop a New York Times, all of the people who are already following Peter, like, damn, okay, yeah, we knew he was a kick-ass podcast host and he wrote a book, but shit, he's in the New York Times. Yeah, all right. Now, just makes everything sing.
And I think it's important to continually have an open mind, to be a learner. So I'm on this podcast, but I actually have like 5 different notes of things that I've learned just from our discussion here. So don't be afraid, or don't think that you know everything, because I certainly don't. And this opportunity for me to learn here, like podcastguest.com, I am so down with that.
Okay, so we do a lot of email marketing at Social Advisors, right? And so one of our goals, and it plays into the OPN that we were talking about, the other people's networks, is to grow an email database 36-to-1 ROI over social content. We've got some stats behind it. One of the questions that come up a lot when I'm talking to advisors about marketing strategy is, how do we continue as we're creating influence, right? We talked earlier about micro influencing as a start to all of this. Creating influence, are there ways or strategies that you guys can implement, whether it's podcasting or PR, that can help to build that database? We don't want to be seen once and be impressive once. We want to continue to be in front of these people that are seeing us, right? So is it promoting a lead magnet of some sort? That seems like it might be out of place a little bit. I don't know, Matt, you got a comment on that?
Well, I'm not trying to put words in Abby's mouth, but it needs to be all part of the sequence, right? And so, 0-click content featured in New York Times, that's just a post, right? But then the halo effect around the other posts where you're saying, hey, download this free guide, had love for you to be on our mailing list, but it has to be a complete plan from soup to nuts, right? And Charlie, this is where, and I know you're not going to do this, so I will. This is where Social Advisors plugs into this entire system, right? So you've got kick-ass PR, you're getting that notification, getting that notoriety, right? That exposure. You've got a great show that you control all of the content plus strong social media. And then all of a sudden you plug Social Advisors onto that. Now we've got a complete system, so that when somebody hears you on the Today Show, they have a path that they can take to get into your email system, so they can actually be starting to get nurtured as a lead or a potential prospect, especially a qualified prospect if your nurture sequences are great. And we do that with the show. So when you start a show with us, the goal is to get listeners initially, but then it switches. It switches pretty quickly. About 9 to 12 months into your podcasting journey, we flip the switch where we want to get people into a free consultation, or download our 5-step retirement guide, or 5 biggest mistakes, or my ebook. That's another huge thing that people really love. 3 free chapters of Pete's new book, right? Those are the sorts of things that work very well in our world.
Very cool. Very cool. Abby, I go quiet for a second because I didn't know if you had something to add to
Oh,
what Matt
well,
was
I
saying.
will just say I think something you can do that instantly adds credibility to your homepage is just add, if your compliance will allow it, add the media logos that you've been featured in.
Yep.
Agreed.
Because then people see that right away and they say, oh, he's legit.
Yeah,
So
such a huge credibility factor. All right.
So I wanted to bring one
Yeah,
other thing in too
yeah.
that Abby and her team is really, really good at, and that is industry awards. If you look behind me, you can see industry awards from over here on the left, the 2024 Investment News ESG Responsible Advisor of the Year, to some others that I've got from Think Advisor and some local ones as well. Those are things that, again, provide additional credibility. If you go to our website, you'll see, that I'm the advisor of the year. If you go to my book website, same thing. It's got all that information on there. And I mean, in the business, we know that it doesn't necessarily mean a whole lot, but when you're out there in the public and they see something like that, that's just a
That does
bigger
matter.
opportunity for you to say, oh, so not only does this guy have a book, a podcast, he's writing in all these periodicals, he's being quoted in all these periodicals, but he's also being recognized by people within the industry as well.
Yeah, huge credibility factors.
Yeah.
Right. That thing. Wonderful. So I'll tell you what, you guys, I came into this hot, obviously. And again, my apologies for making that happen. Thank you for sticking with me and being my friends and, being supportive anyway. And as a result, our conversation went in a direction that was not necessarily planned for, but I think that's actually better. So I want to just note a few things that I've been writing down as we've been talking, so we can kind of recap a little bit. And then, because of coming in hot, I don't have your QR codes ready, so I would love for you to put your email address or a link to your calendar in the chat. And anybody, of course, that has questions from our group of advisors that have joined us, and thank you for being here, taking some time out of your day. The number one thing I wrote down is plan. This is not happening by accident, right? This is not getting one article. This is not doing a series of 10 podcasts. This is creating an influence plan. Matt, thank you for bringing that up and being succinct with that. The other thing that I minimized it to the acronym OPN, right? But we had a much larger conversation about that, where you don't have to kick down doors. If you've got a certain niche, look for the people that are already doing the work within that niche, because not only do you get an introduction to those people that they have built over months or years of the work that they've done, there's a trust transfer there. If you can have a podcast guest that already speaks to that niche and they've got a network, they're gonna broadcast that podcast, right? And not only do you get in front of their audience, but that trust grows immediately, because it's almost like a recommendation or an endorsement of some sort, right? When they're on your podcast. Number 3 that I wrote down, don't be afraid to ask. And that might be one of the most important on the list, right? So I find that there's a large mindset issue with a lot of advisors, a lot of people. I don't want to single out advisors in that. There is a fear of not being worthy of being at that, at that point. So don't be afraid to ask. Matt, I wrote on podcastguest.com because that's an awesome resource. And then the last thing that I wrote down is capturing data. Right. So it's great that you can get, 500 downloads on a podcast, but how do we get to know who 10% of those people are? Right. Yeah. It's great that we get PR features, but how do we get to know who those people are that are consuming the PR, so that we can continually stay in front of them? So those are the 5 I wrote down. I don't know if you guys have any additions that I missed or didn't make the cut.
Buy PR training.
Right. Buy PR training.
I'm sorry. I just, again, so Jim here just, said, great program, Charlie. This changes my whole perspective, to be discussed. Awesome. Right. That PR training changes your whole perspective.
Yeah.
It's going to make you better with clients. It's going to make you better with prospects. It's going to make you better in relationships, because one of the things that you're going to learn very quickly is in the title of the book is just shut the F up and listen. And the more that you show that you listen, especially to reporters, and you're not just talking for 10 minutes straight, hoping they glean something, and learning how to talk in those sound bites is wildly important. And it also makes your podcasts better, your content marketing better, your video clips better. you know, when you do one of these, hey, I just got out of a meeting with a client, when you know how to succinctly communicate that in less than, 90 seconds, that's what PR training can do for you.
Better
Yeah.
husband too. Better.
Yeah. All right.
I-
Um,
Go
you
ahead,
got a
Abby.
question actually from Kevin.
Okay.
For, in terms of saying something that stands out, it seems that sustainable ideology can often overlap with politics. How do you navigate that aspect? Do you stay politically neutral, safe, or are political implications just speaking to your niche?
I'm anything but safe, and I'll tell you a story. So Earth Equity was acquired by Prime Capital Financial about 2.5 years ago. So we could be their sustainable investing arm. They're a 30-some billion-dollar RIA based out of Kansas City. And so I had posted a few things on LinkedIn about Tesla and their CEO, who, everybody knows tends to be a little bit outspoken. And, when it comes to, I drive a Tesla, and I'm sort of embarrassed to drive a Tesla now. And so I posted something on LinkedIn about giving up my Tesla. And the reason I'm giving it up is because of the CEO. And so I got a text from the chairman of Prime, who's a super guy. He's been really, really supportive of us. And he was just saying, are you sure you want to be posting political content on LinkedIn? And I says, let me tell you a little bit the reason why I do it. Because the audience that I'm speaking to expect to hear me say this. They
Right.
expect to hear me say that I'm turning in my lease early and I'm buying a Rivian because the optics that me driving a Tesla are putting out there isn't what I want to show. And so I think our opportunity to bring in more people because I am wearing my politics on my sleeve. Now, I'm not like going absolutely crazy. I'm not the conspiracy theory folks, but I'm making sure that when it comes to what we do and my understanding of how important sustainability is in a changed climate world, that people know what we do, but more importantly, why we do it. And I think that's important. So I want to go back to one of you were talking about your five, Charlie, and those were like spot on from that list, and yours as well, Matt. But Abby, you and Charlie said something about you don't have to appeal to everybody, and I think it was Seth Godin that did the 1,000 true fans. That's just that is absolutely perfect. If you can get 1,000 true fans, the multiplier effect on that just goes beyond probably anything that you're able to deal with as as a small firm for certainly, but your opportunities there will just multiply.
Well, we bring both of those bring it back to niche, right, Pete? If you were serving everybody and worried about alienating some of your network, you probably can't have that statement about Tesla.
Right.
But because you know the mindset in general of the people that you serve, it was actually, to your point, expected.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And if I'm not saying something, then they're saying, well, what's going on with Pete?
Yeah. Right. We do have another question. I know we're over already, but thank you everybody. I think one person jumped off it too, but otherwise we got everybody here. From Chris. Chris has a question. How should I approach someone who is well known in their industry but doesn't consider themselves an influencer to become more vocal advocate than they already are for my podcast? How do we create?
So he said for my
fame?
product. So
product,
I don't know
sorry.
if he meant podcast, but so I want to jump in and how you get them to become advocates is you get them to come on your podcast and you interview them and you make them sound really smart. And the product is a conference. Perfect, dude. That's exactly what you want to do is you want to bring them. So this is how Kirk and I built Proudmouth. We did 500 episodes of the Top Advisor Marketing Podcast, and we interviewed the Charlies of the world. And Abby, I don't think you were on the show, and I'm sorry about that, but you will be in the future one. But we brought all of these people on the show so that they would share that show with their network, and we created that 1,000 raving fans that Godin was talking about. So get that person to come on your show, spend time, show your preparation, show your due diligence, do a good interview. That fundamentally is going to change the relationship that person has with you and your conference.
Yeah. Other people's networks,
other people's networks, or other people's podcasts. That's
or other people's podcasts. That's it. You guys, this is awesome. Again, I kind of stumbled in here and got us off to a little bit of a chunky start there, but at least I remember to record this one.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Yes.
so we're, but this has been,
Well, I have a feeling we could reproduce this without any problem whatsoever.
I think so too. I don't know if we could be, but we were so off script, Pete, that I threw that away. I finally found it and then I threw it away. But we were so off script, but I love the organic nature of the conversation. We've gotten a lot of great feedback from the folks that were here. Of course, everybody, we're going to send, we'll send a recording out because we have one. We'll send a recording out to everybody that registered and attended. And you've got either the email or the calendar link for our panelists. So if you want to meet with somebody, I know we're offering free strategy sessions. You've got experts here. I mean, people who have been doing it for a long time. So again, Matt Halloran, my friend and co-founder of Proudmouth, thank you so much for your time and for your expertise and your knowledge and your input. Abby Sheridan, thank you for being here. Founder of Greenrose Communications. I think I said PR earlier, but PR and communications. So thank you so much, Abby, for being here. Peter, you have so much insight from a practical nature, from a practical implementation perspective. Your words are invaluable to the advisors that joined us. I want to thank you for adding your knowledge and experience to the conversation. You guys are awesome. Can't wait to do something with you again in the future.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Let's do it again.
Let's do it again. Yeah, I'm open to it. Yeah, let's do it again. All right, rockin'. Have a good rest of your day. And everybody who joined us, thanks for taking an hour out of your life and hanging out with us.
Thank you.
Yeah.